What I like about this part of the world is that people are very independently minded with regards to their thinking, and I think this is the sort of area where people really will think long and hard about Britain's relationship with the European Union, and I think turnout will be very high. You know, I really believe that this will be one of the areas of Britain where many people will turn out. I'd really start by saying the obvious. We are now at a fateful crossroads in our history. We have, like anybody under the age of 57, I have for the first time my chance to vote on Britain's relationship with a European institution. And really, I'm very concerned about what hasn't been achieved. And to me, the big question that came out of the Prime Minister's renegotiations is not what was in it, but what wasn't in it. Of course, there was, contrary to manifesto pledges, there was no guarantee on repatriating Britain's fishing waters. There was the Common Agricultural Policy wasn't up for grabs. But more importantly of all, it was an old-fashioned word which nobody really likes to say very much about now, and that's sovereignty. What I found distinctly missing from that renegotiation was the lack of sovereignty for Britain's Parliament and the lack of sovereignty for Britain's court. And to my mind, you know, that really just runs roughshod over the great sacrifices that our country has made. And I'm not just talking about the two, obviously, bloody sacrifices made over those two terrible world wars in the last century, but also the social sacrifices. If we go back to the time of the Levellers, the Chartists, the Tolpuddle Martyrs, the Jarrow Marchers, if we think of the suffragette movement, June 1913, Emily Davidson was so convinced and committed to the cause of gaining equal rights for women to vote that she actually died underneath the King's Horse called Avalon at the Epsom Derby. I have to wonder really what our country have done since, what have our politicians done since that time? Why have we gone away from what was, of course, the common market to where we are today? Why have we not been given a real say on where we have gone over those years? Because my mum voted for a common market back in 1975 because she believed what our politicians told us. She believed it was all about free trade, it was all about cheap wine. And of course what we weren't told, it was all about political integration and political union. And this is a great question now that we have to face, because if in 1975, when we had that referendum, 2 years after we joined what was then referred to as a common market, if people realised where we were now, where we would have been then, we really wouldn't be in the situation we're in today. It's an issue that transcends traditional British politics. It's not a right-wing issue, it's not a left-wing issue, and I think the proof of the pudding is in the eating. We look back to 1975 referendum, and you had Tony Benn on the left of British politics, and Enoch Powell on the right of British politics. Two people whose politics was so far apart. And of course, I remember well what Tony Benn said when the European Communities Act passed and the legislation took us in to the common market. And he stood watching the votes going in and out, of the lobby, and he said it was a coup d'etat. It was a coup d'etat of the political class that did not recognise the democratic rights of the British people. And I think that probably sums it up beautifully. And of course, we fast forward now to 2016, and again we're hearing that this issue transcends British politics. We've just heard Simon speak about David Owen. We see right-wing conservatives. We see George Galloway, someone I probably disagree with most than anybody apart from this coalition. We see Nigel Farage, Nigel and George sharing a platform. Now they wouldn't agree on the price of coffee, of a cup of coffee, but what they will agree on is that the best people to run Britain are the British people. And I believe that is a great safety valve that's kept our country free from violent revolution. And the fact it's very simple. If we don't like what our politicians do, we don't vote for them at a general election. We did that to Mr Major in 1997, we did that lately to Mr Brown in 2010, of course, more recently to Mr Clegg, who was part of the coalition only earlier last year. But of course that doesn't apply within the European Union. I'm a member of the European Parliament, such as Jill, and of course what we find in the European Parliament is we run roughshod over. Most of the legislation that comes through the European Parliament hasn't been proposed by members of the European Parliament such as us. we don't have the ability, as so-called parliamentarians, to even draft legislation. That has to come from the Commission, by and large, with a few notable exceptions with the European Central Bank on matters related to the Eurozone. So how can we truly be parliamentarians if we don't even have the ability to propose a bill on behalf of an issue that might be raised by our constituents? Doesn't that sum up the situation? Yes, the Commission proposes those ideas, they're put to the Council of Ministers. But of course, on that Council of Ministers, which is made up of a minister from each of the 28 member states, Britain only has 8% of the votes. So there have been 72 occasions since 1998 where successive British governments, Labour, Coalition and Conservative, have actually objected to some legislation that's been proposed by the Commission. And of those 72 occasions, again, Labour, Conservative, Coalition politicians have raised a concern. They've been outvoted on all 72 occasions. So doesn't that just sum up the situation? So what this really is about is challenging the establishment, because the establishment love the idea of the European Union. They love the idea of when we joined that common market. You know, we joined on a promise of free trade, and of course from the time that we joined, Britain had decaying infrastructures, we were strike-torn, the economy was in a terrible state. We looked across the channel and we saw this land of milk and honey. But instead of milk and honey, all we've had is regulation, and even more regulation. And that goes back to what Jill was saying about the ratchet mechanism. Now surely if a piece of legislation is bad, a government should be able to repeal that legislation, but of course that can't happen with European legislation without the unanimous agreement of all 28 member states. So quite clearly, you're not going to get any reform. In fact, we know we're not going to get any reform because the way the Prime Minister stormed into battle, as he didn't, with regards to renegotiations, we saw how little he really achieved. And I think that really is a true indication of the strength of the direction that the European Union is heading. But what I think was the strongest indication was what was said by Michael Gove, his Conservative Minister, who has now come out on our side in favour of leaving the European Union. And he said last week, but ministers every day, every single day, a minister will say to one of his civil servants, propose an idea, and every single day in every single ministry throughout our government, a civil servant will say to that minister without fail, sorry minister, that would be against EU rules. So what is the point in having a parliament if we can't even elect politicians to carry on not only their will, but the will of the British people? And we hear big business, the CBI coming out, saying it's all in favour of being in the European Union. Of course they're in favour, they're the establishment. They're the ones who are lobbying, the big businesses are the people who are lobbying the Commission to get these reams of regulation. It's the small and medium enterprises that really, really are suffering at the hands of this regulation. And in fact, 75% of Britain's businesses are small and medium enterprises who don't even trade outside of the United Kingdom's borders. So they wouldn't be affected by any issues of the scaremongering about trade that we're hearing so often. But of course that's ridiculous anyway, because people will say, well, if we're outside the European Union, look at Norway, look at Switzerland, they have to sign up to the rules. But that's not the case, because Britain is in a very different situation. And that situation is that we have a trade deficit with the European Union. And actually when we started these speeches 6-8 months ago, I was quoting the fact that our trade deficit with the European Union, because on year before last figures, was at £61 billion a year. That meant that we buy £61 billion a year more goods from the European Union than the European Union do from us. But of course that's changed now, because this year's figures have been released. And this year's figures show an incredible jump. And our trade deficit now with the European Union has jumped from 61 billion to 89 billion pounds. But of course that doesn't matter, because we're still going to trade with the European Union because they need us. And even if we can't make a trade agreement with the European Union, as Simon said, we will get our seat back on the World Trade Organisation, because that's how little power our so-called sovereign nation has. Because at the moment, when the World Trade Organisation meets, Britain doesn't sit on the front row. We sit, like all 28 member states of the European Union, having observer status. And the people who negotiate for not just our country, but all 28 member states of the European Union are the European Commission. It's currently the Trade Commission called Cecilia Malmström, a Swedish lady. So that's just one area where we'll have influence. We'll be able to get our seat back on the World Trade Organisation and actually be on the front row and be able to haggle and barter and do what we see fit. But even if we can't force a trade agreement with the European Union, which we will because it's in their interest, even if we can't, it's very simple. Because of the legal mechanism of the World Trade Organisation, we trade with the European Union under World Trade Organisation rules, and tariffs have come right down. And we'll be fine to do that. There won't be an issue with that. And of course the proof of the pudding is in the eating. Because at the moment the United States of America doesn't have a trade agreement with the European Union. That last year they exported over £206 billion worth of goods to the European Union. And in the same period, the People's Republic of China exported over £600 billion worth of goods to the European Union. And they can do that because of World Trade Organisation rules. And this is what we're fighting against. We're fighting against the establishment and the scaremongers who say that little Britain can't succeed outside the European Union. We'll be isolated. Well, aside from the fact that we've got our seat back on the World Trade Organisation, we're also a permanent seat on the Security Council in the United Nations. And of course there's another organisation which nobody really likes talking about. And that organisation is an organisation we have so much in common with. And it's an organisation we turned our back on when we joined the Common Market in 1973. It's an organisation that speaks the international language of English. It's an organisation that has the same business practices, it has even the same legal systems. And of course that organisation is the Commonwealth. And what delighted me as UKIP's Commonwealth spokesman was only yesterday when a New Zealand former government minister, a gentleman called Winston Peters, who's a member of the New Zealand Parliament, came out calling for a Commonwealth free trade agreement when Britain votes for Brexit, which we will do, I'm sure, on June the 23rd next year. So that shows how much influence we have from a smaller nation on the other side of the world. Today we had a vote in the European Parliament, this is why I was late getting here. We had a vote on opening negotiations for a free trade agreement with Australia and New Zealand, and I voted against it. And the reason I voted against it is because I think the sovereign parliament at Westminster should be in a position to negotiate our terms with our Commonwealth kith and kin. And so that's just one area where we can get our way back and really look to the future. And then of course there's the other question, the elephant in the room if you like. That question nobody really wants to talk about without scaremongering, and that is control of our borders. Because whilst we're members of the European Union, we have free movement of workers throughout the 500 million people, the 28 member states of the European Union. And that is not right. We're not talking about the Schengen area and refugees, we're talking about free movement of workers. And of course, we saw what the concession the Prime Minister managed to achieve with regards to payment of migrants' benefits, being put off for 4 years. But of course, that's the end of it, it's not negotiable. After 4 years, that's the end of the story. Benefits will be equal. And of course, currently, actually bizarrely, there is an agreement now to pay equal to member states. So if we have migrants claiming child benefits, and they live in member states outside the European Union, they're working here, but their children live in other member states, we have to pay equal to that country. But of course what the Prime Minister is not telling you, that in 2 or 3 countries within the European Union, we're going to be worse off. Because actually their rates of child benefits are far higher than in the United Kingdom. So why is it that British taxpayers are in a situation where we're paying child benefits to people not even living in the United Kingdom? And to me that is an absolute disgrace and it is an absolute affront. And we have over 1 million people in the United Kingdom on the housing list. And surely the answer is not to encourage more people to settle in the United Kingdom, to come here to work. With no ability to turn workers back from the border, we have a legal obligation. So that can't be right. How can any government, irrespective of their political colour, properly manage the National Health Service, properly manage housing? This is why our public services are really straining at the seams. And then, of course, there's the other issue, security. We heard one of the commissioners only 2 weeks ago say that only 40% of the refugees who are in the European Union actually come from Syria. We heard only last week the head of Europol say that the European Union is in its most dangerous position in the last 10 years. So we have to actually wake up to the fact that we do have serious security problems further down the line. And we see what's happening at Calais. This so-called jungle. People every night trying to get across to the United Kingdom. There's absolutely no reason to accept the scare stories that somehow the jungle will come to Britain if we leave the European Union. Because we'll have a strong border force, and we're under the 1951 Geneva Convention. We will have the ability to return people who illegally enter the country to the last safe haven, which of course would be France. And we have a reciprocal legal agreement with France outside of the European treaties, where France can inspect passports on the British side of the Channel, and Britain can inspect passports on the French side of the Channel. There's absolutely no reason why the French or the British governments would not wish that to change. And of course, this is the scaremongering we're getting. And of course, it puts us under huge pressures with regards to our moral obligations. Because I'm actually the grandson of a Polish Jewish refugee. In 1956, after the Hungarian uprising, my grandmother took in a family of Hungarian refugees. So I don't need to be told about the obligation of welcoming refugees, but what this crisis has done has deliberately muddled up the issue of refugees and asylum and immigration. And that is a huge tragedy, because if we look back, we have a proud history as a nation of welcoming refugees, be it the Huguenots, be it the Ashkenazi Jews, be it the Ugandan nations, more recently. And this really challenges the core of where we are as a people, and actually where we have the ability to do what we want to do in the best interests. And I think that is a huge shame. Angela Merkel has a lot to answer for. That open door invitation, where last year 1 million people entered the European Union because she said Germany would welcome refugees. I was on LBC radio on Tuesday night, because the figures for January to February last year, 4,000 refugees entered the European Union in the first 2 months of the year. The figures are out for January and February for this year, and that figure has jumped from 4,000 from last year to 100,000 for this year. And so we have an exodus of biblical proportions. We cannot help everybody. What we need, I believe, is a genuine points-based system where we can decide the quantity and the quality of the people who we take into this country. What we can't accept is a free movement of people under European Union rules, because even if we remain outside of that Schengen area, we are still affected by the free movement of workers and the pressures that are put on those European Union member states. So we have to be very clear in this referendum about what we're voting for. We're not voting for the status quo. We're not voting to stay where we are, because it was only announced this afternoon that the European Union is holding up further legislation, pushing us closer together until after the referendum has taken place. And that's what we're voting on. We're voting on a future federal Europe, ladies and gentlemen. I sit on the Foreign Affairs Committee of the European Parliament, and we discussed it, we only did it on Tuesday in the committee meeting, the Common Foreign and Security Policy, the Common Foreign and Defence Policy, and this is where we're heading towards. We're heading towards a European army. We have a gendarmerie already We already have a battalion of European Union forces on peacekeeping duties in the Balkans. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to be very clear. And I believe that Roy Jenkins was actually very honest in what he said. I disagree with his politics. Former leader of the SDP, former president of the European Commission. And he said there are now only two clear and consistent positions in regards to Britain's relationship with the European Union. And that is all in or all out. And he's right, we can't pick and choose. We can't say to the European Union, we have the good bits, you have the bad bits. And actually, standing back and trying to be independent, that's not fair on the European Union. Why would it be in their interest to do that? It, ladies and gentlemen, is warts and all. And I think there is a better option for Britain. And we have to take this lifetime opportunity to return the power to our electorate to decide the quality of the politicians who lead our country. And if they don't live up to that quality, you can let somebody else in who can repeal those laws. And that really is the key question. It is who governs Britain. Is it the British people, the British Parliament, through the mandate of the British people, or is it an unelected European Commission that continues to run roughshod, not just over our sovereignty, but the sovereignty of all 28 member states? Because I believe the great strength of Europe is its diversity. The fact that the French are French, the British are British, the Germans are Germans, the Dutch are Dutch, the Greek are Greek. In fact, vive la différence. Let's not all be pasteurised, harmonised and homogenised and made into something we're not. We're not European. You say, there's no such thing as European. So I went out for a meal last night. What did you have? I had a Chinese. I went out for an Indian. You don't say I went out for a European. So I went out for an Italian. I might have gone out for a Greek. I might have gone out for a nice tapas. But there is no such thing. And every time someone has tried to bring Europe together as one, it has ended in tragedy. So I say, let's work together with our NATO partners. Let's have reciprocal agreements and treaties with the French as we do. Let's be on best terms with the European Union. But of course, their big fear is it's not just the British people who are seriously questioning the direction of the European Union. And the cat is out of the bag because there is a referendum in Denmark, I beg your pardon, in the Netherlands in a couple of months' time on the issue of an association agreement with the Ukraine. And the Dutch people are getting very concerned about the direction of the European Union, and I really believe the Irish people will look at things very differently when Britain votes to leave the European Union. And then, of course, there's the Danish people. The French have already said no in previous treaties, as have the Dutch, as have the Irish. But of course, the Commission don't understand the word no. They make them go back and ask the question again. Well, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen because in Parliament today, well, actually it's not Parliament, I call it a chamber. It's nothing like a Parliament. In the chamber today, I asked a question to one of the most powerful members of the European Parliament, a man called Manfred Weber, who is the leader of the Christian Democrat group within the European Parliament. They're called the European People's Party. And I asked him a question. He gave a speech and put my hand up. Mr. Garland, I have a question. And he made a point. He said in that speech that there will be no further renegotiation in the event of a vote for Brexit. So there are some who will say, if we vote to leave the European Union, we can go back and organise another treaty. We can't do that, ladies and gentlemen. I think that is a good thing. The Europhiles, what I'm jokingly referring to as the Romanians, the ones who want to remain in the European Union. What the Romanians are saying is that, oh, isn't that scary? That means we cast adrift. No, it's not. It means we get our country back. We get our sovereignty back. And we can start engaging with the wider world again. We can start actually encouraging politics again in this country. Is it any wonder that the turnout is so low at general elections nowadays? Because our politicians have so little power. They're arguing over the same thing but just dressing out differently. Well, this is a chance to really regain our future. And it isn't just about us, it's about the generation after us, and the generation after that, and the generation after that. And I already know that whatever happens on the morning of June the 24th after that referendum, the sun's going to come up in the morning, the lights are going to come on, people are going to be breathing. We're not going to fall off the end of the world. In fact, the world's going to become a far closer place. And I already believe, ladies and gentlemen, that the world is our oyster. But if we remain inside the European Union, our future is as a plan. Thank you.